Hi, I'm Ranger Lauren of Boston National Historical Park. Today we'll take a look at the Boston doctor who was considered by the British Crown to be one of the most dangerous men in the American colonies. Here are 5 things you should know about Dr. Joseph Warren. In early 1764, another smallpox epidemic ravaged Boston. Joseph Warren was just 22 years old, a recent Harvard graduate who had established his own medical practice. Many fled the town, but Dr. Warren stayed in Boston to care for the sick and dying. What he lacked in experience, he made up for in dedication to his profession and his patients. This was Warren's opportunity to establish himself as a trusted Boston doctor. Joseph Warren, in addition to attending sickbeds, inoculated hundreds. And despite still being in debt for his education, he inoculated those who could not afford to pay him for the procedure. The smallpox epidemic allowed Warren to form new and prominent connections, including John Adams, who formed a close friendship with the young Warren when he came to Boston for his smallpox inoculation. Samuel Gray, Samuel Matherick, James Caldwell, Crispus Attucks, Patrick Carr. These are the names Joseph Warren wanted every Bostonian to remember, the names of the Boston Massacre victims. When British soldiers fired into a crowd on the evening of March 5, 1770, Joseph Warren witnessed firsthand the horrors of the Boston Massacre when he was called to care for the wounded. The Boston Massacre was remembered every year with a public commemoration, and in 1772, Warren was asked to deliver the address. Despite being in the middle of a blizzard, over 4,000 turned out, crowding around the Old South Meeting House for the opportunity to hear Joseph Warren's powerful oration, in which he denounced Parliament's taxation of the colonies and the presence of British soldiers in the city streets. In 1775, Warren was again chosen to deliver the address, this time making the event all the more dramatic by showing up in a Roman toga. "Our country is in danger," he declared. "On you depends the fortune of America. You are to decide the important question on which rests the happiness and liberty of millions yet unborn. Act worthy of yourselves." We often think of the Boston Massacre victims as being the first martyrs of the American Revolution. But 2 weeks prior, on February 22, 1770, Christopher Sider was murdered. When an angry mob formed around the house of despised loyalist and customs official Ebenezer Richardson, Richardson leaned his musket out of his window and fired into the crowd of protesters, striking an 11-year-old boy, Christopher Sider. Despite Joseph Warren's best efforts, Sider later died from his wounds. The Sons of Liberty were quick to label Sider a martyr, with Samuel Adams calling him the first martyr to American liberty. Joseph Warren supported his friend Paul Revere in reminding Boston of the child's senseless murder on the 1-year anniversary. Paul Revere hung a drawing of Sider's ghost here in one of his windows, with a lantern lit behind it to create a ghostly glow. It read, "Sider's pale ghost, fresh bleeding stands, in vengeance for his death demands." One of Parliament's responses to the Boston Tea Party was the passage of the Port Act, which closed Boston's port until the destroyed tea could be paid for. Bostonians began to worry. With the port closed, Boston's economy would cripple and unemployment would rise. Dr. Joseph Warren began dedicating his time to the Committee of Donations, which formed to aid Boston's struggling citizens. Donations began pouring in, and as word of Boston's plight spread, the other colonies united to send their support. Donations included food, livestock, cash, and whatever towns could spare. As a member of the committee, Dr. Joseph Warren handled the incoming donations and their distribution to those most in need. "It gives us pleasure amidst our suffering," Joseph Warren wrote, "to find our brethren determined to assist and support us while we are struggling for American freedom." In September 1774, Joseph Warren drafted the Suffolk Resolves. The Resolves rejected the Massachusetts Government Act, one of the intolerable acts, which threatened Massachusetts' ability to self-govern. It is, quote, "an indispensable duty to maintain, defend, and preserve those civil and religious rights and liberties for which many of our fathers fought, bled, and died, Warren declared. The Suffolk Resolves led to the establishment of the Massachusetts Provincial Congress, the activation of the colonial militia, and a courier system that spread alarm regarding British military movement. Joseph Warren dispatched Paul Revere to Philadelphia with a copy of the Suffolk Resolves, which were read before and unanimously approved by the Continental Congress, fostering a growing sense of unity amongst the 13 colonies. By the time he drafted the Suffolk Resolves, Dr. Joseph Warren had become a powerful leader in Boston. The following year, 1775, saw the first shots of the American Revolution fired, with Joseph Warren in the thick of the action. Join us next time for 5 more things you should know about Dr. Joseph Warren.